Let me tell you a little bit about Edda. Besides all these things here, there are other things to Edda than this. Edda Sigurdar came to this country when she was 19 years old, and she came because her sister had immigrated to Seattle area, and she wanted to join them. And she went to school in Washington State, and she came to this area, Portland area, in 1981. And Edda has her own hairstyling salon, and she has 2 children, Sarah and Ken, and they came along to take all this in and out. Edda has been very involved. Once she got the prestigious Niskanen Award for her volunteer work. I was in charge of Scandinavian for 5 years, and I got a little sick of it, and I wanted to try something else. And I asked Edda, I said, would you like to be chairman of Scandinavian? No, she said, thank you very much. Not after I see what you have been through. But anyway, she had second thoughts about it, came back, and she ran it for 9 or 10 years. Very successful. But there's more to Edda than Scandinavian. She also runs marathons, and she skis, and she is involved in the different cultural aspects of Portland. And one thing you might discover during the lecture, she is registered with the Oregon Historical Society as an ethnic needlework artist. So now, ladies and gentlemen, button your sweat.
Good evening, dear guests. My name is Edda Sigurdar. I'm born in Iceland in 1949 in June. Beginning of the birding season coming into the country, and lots of wonderful long evenings, and where you play all night when you're a kid. What I want to start on is I'm going to go sort of through a sequence of my events of my growing up. And I'm starting on this side because this was my playground. And this was about a mile from my house in Reykjavik. Yeah, it was nice. Then Marie's always such a good helper. Right here. This painting I have had since 1972, I believe. My sisters gave me that. When I came to visit, my first visit back to Iceland, and being that as a child of 3 or 4, I used to play on this pond, both fishing little crawdaddy things, and then in the winter we would slide on it. This is the fjord from Reykjavik, seen from all different spots of the city. And this was the first concrete house built in Iceland by the Danish government. This is where the Danish governor lived, which was kind of odd because you have to take a boat to get there. But anyway, this mountain Esja right here is everyone's favorite. We talk a lot about Mount Esja, and this is it because it starts showing the spring, and it starts showing the fall, and the winter when it's all clothed in snow, this whole area. And my mother was very good at predicting the weather by looking at the mountain. And she knew exactly what was happening.
Oh, you didn't see it.
You didn't see it? Okay. Well, just a little transfer over here. Yeah. This is the view from the city.
I still can't see it.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. Organized enough.
I'm sure some of you that have been there have recognized this. You can't help but recognize it.
Good.
All right.
You got it then? Maybe that in our house.
Now I'm just going to give you a few little facts on Iceland, and then I'm going to go into my childhood magical life. Iceland engulfs an area of about 40,000 square miles. The population is just over 300,000 right now. The city of Reykjavik, where I'm from, has the most about 190,000 people in the greater Reykjavik area. The religion is Lutheran, and it's a state church, and it's about 87% Lutheran, and about the rest is who knows what. Education is very important in Iceland, and it's mandatory school. Compulsory education are number 992 of them. Schools above compulsory education are 42. Universities and colleges are 8. In a small country, that is a lot. The language is Nordic heritage, derived from the Vikings. So we speak Old Norse. That's basically where it comes from. The history of Iceland, it was first settled by Irish monks, and then the Vikings came and chased them out, which we are not surprised at. And in 930, Iceland founded the Althing, the first Althing in the world. Althing in the world, that is the first government form. Yes. And let's see, then it was Danes that controlled the country, the Norwegians controlled it, and then finally in 1918, Iceland got most of its independence, and then the 17th of June, 1944, is when we received our independence, which we greatly appreciate. But anyway, government, many different parties. People are very strong-headed over there. And though few of them know me, I kind of, yeah, you can kind of go along with that. Okay. Air Transportation International Organization's head of state is no other than Ólafur Ragnar Grímsson, and we have a distant cousin of his right here. Very, I think they're about fourth generation, or second generation.
Yes, our grandfathers were brothers.
There you go. It's quite a story. It's quite a story. But anyway, like I said, I was born in 1949. People didn't have much in those days. There was no central heating in Iceland. It was all coal. But I had 6 kids, or 5 kids ahead of me. I have 5 older siblings. I'm number 6. And I have 1 younger sister. My oldest sister is Elizabeth. She lives in New York State, upstate New York. My second oldest is Guðríður Sigurdar. She lives in Seattle. My sister Hulda Bryndís used to live in Seattle up until about 4 years ago. After being here for 25 years, she and her husband went back to Iceland and retired. I have a brother, Herman, that lives up in Everett, Washington. I have a sister, Margaret, who lives in Iceland and travels to Thailand 6 months out of the year, like many Europeans. Then there's myself here. I've lived in Utah, Washington State, and in Oregon, and I like this the best. And then there's my little sister. We call her little sister even if she's 54. Maria, who I used to babysit a lot. Anyway, starting on the fact, I've been thinking about this a lot. What do I really want to relay about my childhood? Well, my childhood was really mystical to me. I mean, I was one of these kids that sat in the window and watched the snow come down and see many different things come out of it. Peaceful. Or on a clear night, I would step outside the front door of my home and look up at the northern lights, which were totally intriguing. I don't care how many hours you spend watching this flicker in the sky. Or it would be a moonlit night with lots of stars. And luckily for me, I lived in an area that was not close to the city. I mean, I was in the city, but out on the outskirts. So we had all street lights. My friends consisted of neighborhood children. We created our own games of hide and seek, corner ball, with some stick that you dug up somewhere and some flat ball. We did jump rope. We did ice skating for those who had them. We did sledding in the wintertime, and we had those push sleds that they use in Scandinavia in the wintertime, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. And we had a wonderful time. And then in the summertime, when the evenings started getting longer, we started playing outside. 8 o'clock would come, my mother would go, Edda, Maka, and I'd go, oh no, don't do that, we want to stay outside. Because most of the other children were able to play at least till 10. But my mother was one of these we called her old-fashioned, but you know, that's acceptable. So we had to come in, and I would spend sometimes my evenings with my head outside, inside, in the window, lift up the curtains and watch all the kids out there playing. And I was so envious, because it would be nice, warm evenings. We're not talking 70 degrees, but 50, 55. So, let's see. We would do a lot of things to entertain ourselves. Little kids were safe. You didn't have to worry about where your children went in those days. And so we would love to go up into the outer area, and in the summertime, when the berries came on, blackberries, we'd go and collect krækiber. And then, a little later in the year, we would go and pick mountain grass. And this was eaten by the Vikings. Very, very nutritious. And we would also, they would dry it, or we'd eat it fresh. And my sister and I would go up into the hills, and we'd pick these things. And Mother would then heat up some milk, and we put this in there, and it had kind of a salty taste to it. A little bit fishy. But we thought it was great, because we went out and got it ourselves. So it was a fabulous thing to do. Well, then other kids would have their collections of this, that, and I collected napkins. Several of us girls collected napkins. And it just so happens that I still have my napkin collection. From the years as a 3-year-old. You would walk up to the neighbors and say, do you have any napkins to give us? And the little old lady or whomever lived there would come and say, well, I'll check and see, come on in. And then they'd give us a cookie or something. And you know what? It was fantastic what we could collect. I mean, it was just pretty unbelievable. Here's a soccer one. And to have both the dessert napkin and what we used to call a dinner napkin, that was quite the thing to do. When you could really come up with a collection of two. And I don't know how many of you here ever experienced this.
We did it too in Denmark.
Did you do it too? Okay. Yeah, I'll show you. I'll show you my Danish one, because this was something. We didn't have money. There was no such thing as going to the movies, and there certainly wasn't any television. So we would just absolutely adore doing this. And I'm so glad that I was able to save this out of the attic of my mom's house.
Are they paper?
They're all paper. Oh yes. Oh yeah. They're all paper napkins of all kinds. Here is a Christmas one. And you know, when you're a little kid and you don't have much, this was treasure. It was pure treasure. I'm trying to find the bingo grundle one.
You know, we also traded them.
Oh! Then we'd sit on wherever and trade napkins. This was great fun to do. It was fabulous fun to do. Like, can you imagine finding something like this? I mean, that's pretty colorful and special stuff.
No.
My mother certainly didn't have anything like that. But anyway, here is what I'm looking for, just for us, because, you know, the Danes loved us.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I mean, I didn't the sequel pattern was at being a rental in those days. But hey, there's nothing better than being able to have the imagination to love this sort of thing. And then another thing we also did, which we didn't get much candy. So then we'd set up store. We set up a store, pretend store. And we'd take candy wrappers. We got candy, we saved our wrappers. And then we'd go and make mud cakes, wrap them in the paper, and then we'd set up store and say, well, this cost you so much, and that cost you so much. That was fantastic fun. And then we would also make cakes, mud cakes, and take the leaves around us and do all sorts of wonderful things. And another thing that I thoroughly enjoyed was when my mother would take the three of us younger girls. That was because there's 20 years between the youngest and the oldest in my family. My mother would take us down to the fields. And she would sit and knit and crochet while the three of us played. And there would normally be some water dripping around somewhere. We'd get all dirty and messy. But we had a marvelous time with this. And I remember my mother telling us some wonderful stories and us just being wholesome children. I mean, you didn't know anything about anything. I mean, you really didn't know anything. You were just a little kid, and there you were playing day after day in the summertime. And she would pack a little lunch, and we'd put milk in a Coke bottle with a paper top on it. And sometimes we'd be drinking milk that was kind of a little bit sour tasting, but you know, we did. So anyway, so that was that. And now we're going to go into a little bit of a story that I had treasured when I was a little girl. And it was a story about Dimmaler. And this story depicted a little girl whose swan died. And it's a little bit like the Match Girl, Hans Christian Andersen, but this is written by Guðmundur Þorsteinsson, an Icelandic author. So this was one of my favorite books when I was a little girl, because it was sort of my dream, in a way, to think that people could be so sad, and then in the end, they could be so happy, which we all strive for. Comfort, well-being, and love from our people. So, any questions about between 1 and 5? And you know what? We were dirt poor. I didn't know it. I had no idea. But that's okay. Okay, then I am going to move on. And we're going to my beginning school years.
This question, excuse me.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, what type of work did your father do?
Okay, my father was a concrete mason. He built houses. That's what he did. And my mother was a stay-at-home mom. Try to survive and keep things going. As my father sometimes had to be gone at night because in the wintertime when he's building houses over there, and the heat had not been put into the houses that he was building, so he'd have to stick around to try to keep, heat in these places so the concrete wouldn't crack on them, and all these things that he had to be concerned about. So, anyway, kindergarten came, and I was not happy. I was a mama's girl. They say that I hung on her apron strings, which I probably did. My first year was not a happy one in kindergarten. It was only like 2 hours. And I remember having to go to this woman's house, and it was kind of like in her garage. And her name was Unna. I remember that. So it was a rather traumatic time for me. So then, my mother was not, and maybe in those days people just didn't talk to their children that much. So your inner self didn't really get to ask many questions. You were just one of the children, and therefore you knew you were loved, but you didn't know much else. So anyway, my going to school was a trauma for me. I want to show you here a book. Gagna is my first book. And I looked at this when I was a little girl, and I used to go, how am I ever going to learn to read this? So, you know, I tried to stammer this out with my mother, and she would just try to encourage me. But when you're so scared, you don't comprehend how simple it is. And I remember this here. But my favorite one was when I started recognizing that I could in the classroom, which had scared me to death. So this one right here, Cece, was the real, I remember this being sort of a, oh my gosh, I can actually read this. And it says, Cece säger SSS, SS säger Cece, Cece säger så säger Cece. And it's all about getting these words out. And this was such a, you know, it was just an absolutely wonderful little book. And it's about all the different things, all the recognition of the letters, to which, however, the situation is in your home. So they did try to introduce you to the similarities of what they were writing to what you were living, which is clever. Now, of course, I didn't know that at that time, but that's not surprising.
Printed in what language?
Huh?
Printed in what language?
Icelandic.
Icelandic.
Oh, yes, it was in Iceland. Well, there was problems in the house. My father was an alcoholic, and he didn't spend much time with us when he could have. He was playing around town, which a lot of Scandinavian men, unfortunately, did. So my mother was a bit of an abused woman, I find out later in life. So we had kind of a hard time. I go in first grade at my sister's house in Keflavik. My family split. My father unfortunately owned the house, but he had forgotten to pay. We went one direction, and all of us 3 little girls were scattered with other relatives. So I would happen to be with my sister. Where's my collection there? Can I have the map right there, please? My sister in Keflavik. Oh, yeah, I should say this. Of course, in Iceland, one reason why a lot of us are here is because of the military. And my sisters, my older sisters, 3 of them, all got engaged to Americans. My mother was not very happy. But, you know, I guess it was a way out for them too. But anyway, so my sisters married young, 17, 18 years old. And I don't even remember them being at home because I was so much younger than they. So anyway, I'm here in Reykjavik when I'm 5, and when I'm 6, I come to Keflavik. That's where the air base was. And my sister and her husband, and they've been married now over 50 years, lived there in a tiny apartment, and they took me in for the first year. So I stayed with them for a year, and my sister loves to brag about the fact that she taught me how to read. And I was just up in Seattle last weekend, and I was telling her I was doing this, and she says to me, well, how are you going to tell them who taught you how to read? Yeah. I said, I'll make sure I'll tell everybody who taught me how. And she says, yeah, remember when I used to press on the ironing board and say, what did you say? How did you pronounce this? I said, okay, fine, got it. So that was the year, my first grade year in Keflavik. Now I want to talk about the celebrations in the grade schools were amazingly wonderful. Christmas came. And we have in Iceland a lot of make-believe. Mystical, magical men. Jólasveinar. And when we were little children, we idolized these guys. This is the one that steals the candles. Now I'm going to talk about first grade and Christmas, and because that was kind of my first real memory of playing up to this and recognizing the days of Christmas. The 13 days before Christmas. First of all, there's such a thing as putting the shoe in the window on my own shoe. So the 12th of December, we put our shoe in the window, and we know that these little elves, your listeners, are going to come and give us treats. This is one of them. Stekkjarstaukur. And these guys belong to the witches that live up in the mountains. And they had the black cat. And if the black cat, if they told you, you're going to see the black cat if you're not good, because Christmas won't come to you. It was pretty scary when you were little. You didn't want to go into that. So put the shoe in the window, and if you got an orange, you were lucky. Mostly we get raisins. But every now and then, somebody, we don't know who, of course it was the elves, which was a real treat. And I'm going to just intervene a little bit about the fact that I did this with my children, Sarah and Ken over here. Living in this country, I had them put the shoe in the window on the 12th of December. So it was real excitement. One day, when they were little, the little girl across the street, whose mother was from Scotland, comes up to me and says, well, I put my shoe in the window and I didn't get anything. She was a good friend of my son's, and their little girl was Maggie. And I'm going, oh my gosh, now what do I say? You know, I mean, what are you going to say? So I said, well, Maggie, you know, I guess the thing is, Ken's mom is Icelandic and yours is from Scotland, so maybe there's some different people that come to Europe. Yeah, but not my window, not my shoe. It's all the magic of the holiday season. For Christmas gifts, we would get a coloring book and crayons. That was big stuff. And if you got the big box of crayons with like 84 or whatever it was, that was wonderful. One year, I got this little tea set. I cherished this tea set that was given to me by the father-in-law of one of my sisters, who happened to be a sea captain on one of the freight liners. And he used to bring things to us every once in a while. So I left this in Iceland when I moved away from the country in '69. And when I got back a few years later, I'm saying to my mom, hey, where's my old tea set? Oh, why do you want that old stuff? Well, my nieces had gotten to it, and this is all that was left. Yes. That's what happens when you have too much, is what I say. You have to take care of things. So anyway, my first grade was spent with my sister in Keflavik. Well, then they had to move back to America. They moved to Denver. And my sister and her husband wanted to adopt me. Well, there was no moving my mother on that one. That was just not okay with her. She said, no, she's not doing that. So my mother became kind of a helper on a farm. And that farm was about in this area right over here. Not too far from Reykjavik. It's a big milk dairy. It's a dairy. And also a pig farm. So anyway, she got us little girls together and we went there for a little while. Until somebody said to my mom, well, you know, my daughter needs a babysitter. I was 7. And my mother says, well, I can do that. And I'm going, well, next thing I know, I'm on the milk truck going to this farm. And that farm was just across from the Westman Islands. And right under here, close to Eyjafjallajökull. It was a beautiful place, but it was a sad place. So I went there, total stranger, 7 years old, with one bag, and I was there for 2 years. Yeah, I was there for 2 years. And I was their official babysitter, cleaner, anything. Today this would be called child labor, slavery. I mean, really, you would call it slavery.
Did you go to school at the same time?
No, just a minute. So you know, now I'm in second grade.
Yeah.
And this particular area had one school for all the children in this little area right here. So they called that East County and West County. So you only went to school every other day because they didn't have enough. So school started, and here I am, this shy child, thinking, what is going on here? And we're in a one-room school, a one-room from first grade up to sixth grade. And across the hall are the high school kids. But anyway, this was right in here. So anyway, this was quite the experience to be with these people. I didn't really think that much about it at the time because, you know, when you're a beggar, you don't know how to say, geez, you know, I deserve better, because you just don't. You just don't. As a matter of fact, I'm going to intervene a little bit here. I was watching something on a documentary on India the other day, and they're talking about the child labor, child slaves that are sold to families for $30 a year. Little kids, little girls, do whatever. And my daughter and I were watching this, and I said, you know what? This is not really much different than what I did when I was 7 years old. Like you got to eat. I slept on a cot in the kitchen. Cot in the kitchen. Well, you know what? It was a good lesson for me, because my determination right then and there told me that this would not be okay to live like this and be treated like that. It taught me a lot. It taught me about unfairness to children, how adults could be nasty, and they're despicable. So all along, I'm listening, I'm watching this, and now I'm getting a little wiser to the world doing this. And I was there for 2 years. So, it was some good things that came along with it. Was for one time in the spring, I would go with the master of the house, and he'd go and collect the little lambs that were born in the spring. That was fun. Got to ride horses. I got to take care of the chickens. I got to know what milk was coming right out of the cows. Haying, how seasons are so important regarding growing the grasses to feed us, and about the harmony of some of the farmers. But when you're a little kid, you don't ever explain, you don't engage in conversation with these people. But they were very self-sufficient. It was quite amazing. But looking back on it, they were not nice. But I was a slave. So you know what, they care. Make a long story short, I did visit them many years later with my children. One time in 1983, I was visiting in Iceland, and I just wanted to meet these people. So I drove over to the farm, and oh my God, it's you. So anyway, she invites us in, we sit down, have coffee and cakes and whatever, and the lady looks at me and she goes, you know what, Dom? I've had many a child working for me, and nobody could come close to what you did. And I thought, is that something to brag about? You know, it just enlightened me again to how people can treat children. It's quite utterly amazing. Huh?
That must have been hard-hearted Hannah.
Well, it was something. They weren't exactly reading your night stories, I can tell you that. But anyway, so then my mother, goodness gracious, I said she had a nervous breakdown and kind of vegetated for about 2 or 3 years. And she got an apartment in the city when I was 9. So I went to school in the city. And my mom got a little apartment for the 3 of us little girls, Margaret, myself, and Maria, in town on the main street. And that apartment was owned by the government, because we certainly didn't have anything. So we lived in city housing, which was no big deal in Iceland. I mean, it's so socialized anyway. So my mother got her act together and started working in a slaughterhouse. We went to school, and all of a sudden we're going, my goodness, this is great. We have our mom, we have our sister, and we can have a good time together. So we started doing all sorts of things. We started reading more. We started being more interested in what was going on around us. My mother woke up to life. And my sisters would come and visit and help. Her sisters would come and help us. They always came on Sundays and bring us treats and have coffee. My sisters and I, my little sisters and I, go to the movie, 3 o'clock, Roy Rogers! Yeah. We see the same Roy Rogers movie Sunday after Sunday, and we thought that was just great. I mean, it didn't take much to it. Happiness was not big. And then if we got to go to Dairy Queen and have ice cream, that was with chocolate dipping on it. That was just phenomenal. Huh?
That was fabulous.
It was fabulous. So anyway, school then became something interesting. The people cared, and some teachers that cared. Now my schooling in Iceland at that time, the classes were marked with A, B, C, D. You know, so the further down you went, the less you could learn. A class was best, B, C, and D. Well, I kind of was in a B class, which was all right because I had a lot to catch up with. But I always knew I could do better than what I had been perceived to be. So there was no question in my mind that I could move on and do well. Well, so I was 3 years in that grade school, and then went on to high school. And I was put in the lowest class. There were 4 of them. There were 4 classes in the high school, A, B, C, D. I was in D again, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is just not going to work for me. So I went to the principal and I said, you know what? The kids in my class, I said to him, I'll never forget this. I sat across the desk from the principal and I said, you know what? The kids in my class are so dumb. They just cannot do anything right. And the teachers always have to tell them over and over again what to do. This guy was a mathematician. He was a wonderful man. Young Islason. He was an old-fashioned, sturdy man who was much into education and wanted his students to achieve well. And he said to me, well, I'm going to give you a challenge, he said. You prove to me at midterms that you can do better or you can move up. And there'll be no questions asked. I said, okay, fair deal. I studied. I said, I'm going to make it. And sure enough, midterm came. I went smack into the B class. High B. Yeah, I was talking to school. That was amazing. It was my freshman year in high school. Because everybody just stayed in one classroom. You didn't move from one to the next. So all of a sudden, I'm thinking to myself, see, I knew I wasn't so dumb. So I moved on. And I had the most wonderful teacher you could ever have. His name is Einar Laxness. And his father happens to be our only Nobel Prize winner in Iceland. Halldór Laxness. His son Einar taught me. And he was the most inspirational, and he knew how kids, he had control, he had goals for you. And to me, that was a huge inspiration and help to see that there are actually people out there that can matter. And they can mold you, and they can move you on well and give you the confidence in who you are. And that's Great stuff. Well, anyway, make a long story short, I chose not to go into higher education, so I finished my high school years mainly in domestics. I mean, doing needlework, studying English, Danish, home work was, let's see here. Oh, I forgot that I was going to talk about my confirmation. Sorry, we'll talk about that. That's freshman year in high school. In the Lutheran church, of course you get baptized as a child. I did get baptized, which was amazing. Confirmation is when you're 13 years old. So you start going to the pastor, the parish you belong to, and you start studying the Bible, which of course you've been studying all since you were in first grade, because they do have mandatory Bible studies in the schools in Iceland. But it's a big thing, big thing. So we did these maps, or these wonderful little picture things, and you people are all welcome to come and look at this when all these prayers that we have to learn and learn this by heart and recite it. Very important for them to do this. And then you have to have this book right here, which is Leda Lucid, and this was my book, and is my book. And it was all about the different stories about Jesus. I mean, this gave us a lot of peace, I think, when we were children, to learn all this. It really was. And then, of course, by the end, in the springtime, around Easter time, you were confirmed. And this is time of celebration in Iceland. All the relatives got up. Well, it's a big thing. You're kind of coming of age into a new life, and they give you cards like this. Yeah. And then your relatives would always put a little money in each card. Or they'd buy you a watch, or they'd give you a nice present. And my poor mom, my dear mother, who had nothing, her siblings came over, and we had a little gathering in our apartment. I mean, it was certainly not big and elaborate like a lot of kids, but you know what? That was okay. We managed. That's my name, Edda Sigurdar, 53. I mean, I'm 13 years old. I'm almost 60 now, so you know this is antique. But anyway, that was a good time. That was a good time, and it was wonderful when my aunts and uncles would come and visit. My mother was one of 11 children, second to the youngest. But we'll talk about that later. So anyway, I wanted to show you some of the work that we started doing in school. Needlework got me into needlework. I think I brought so many things. We had to do testers. These are all samples of our work. All sorts of beautiful things. I mean, who's going to do this today? We're probably not going to do that today. But this was a lot of fun for me. It gave me, I use my hands a lot, and I think it's my tool. It carries me in life. And I use my brain a little bit too. So my high school ended well, and I was fortunate enough to have a good friend of mine that worked for a man that owned a stationery store in Iceland. And he always was willing to hire people to do work, and so I went on and worked with him for a couple of years after high school, and started saving money and traveling. My first trip was to England in 1967, and that was the height of Twiggy and the Beatles and Carnaby Street, and I had never seen such a huge city like London, of course, and a bunch of us kids together and most of them had been there before. There were I was involved with ballroom dancing, and those were my friends that I hung out with and did ballroom dancing with. And we went to Spain for 3 weeks. Went down to Costa Brava and Lortimar, and we spent 3 weeks. I did not know how to handle the wonderful warm weather. Yeah, I love the warm and swimming in the ocean and not freezing. It was unbelievable. So this definitely gave me the taste of being someplace warm. Anyway, we were there, then we went back home, and I couldn't wait to go back to London. It was just such a dynamic city. So in 1968, I went back for a couple of weeks and visited a friend of mine, and came home. And when I came home, I thought to myself, I don't want to live here. This is too cold. It's too small. I wanna break away. So I talked to my sister who was living in Utah at the time. She and her husband were stationed at Hill Air Force Base in Ogden, Utah. And I said to her, do you think there's a chance that I might be able to immigrate? Oh, well, you want to come over? Yeah, please do. So we started the process of getting papers to come in here. And for those of you who are immigrants, we were strict. I mean, we were checked from here to that. X-ray, checked out. Where's your affiliation with this? What have you done? I mean, good thing I was only 19 years old. Because, you know, I mean, you're pretty innocent. So anyway, make a long story short, my mother was not happy. At all. She thought this was just not a good idea. So, but I was determined. I wasn't going to stay there. I wanted to venture out of my own life, do my own thing, and see the world. So the other day, because I've been thinking about this, what am I going to do? How am I going to deliver this program here this evening? So one of my books that I logged information in, or memory book, or what we call it, diary. Yeah. I looked here, and I was looking at the days prior to me moving to America. And I kind of like went, wow, I was really emotional about this. But I was happy too. I was proud that I was leaving. And isn't that kind of sad when you're 19, you're proud you live in your own country? I logged the day before I left what I did, who I saw, and I just couldn't believe when I read that I went to see an old high school friend of mine, or not old, we're kids. Her name is Edda also, and we call each other name sisters. I went to see her the night before. Well, she had been an exchange student in St. Louis. So she knew America a little bit, and I'd never even been here. So in here, I'm talking about visiting with her the night before I leave. I just no more than 2 weeks ago reconnected with her through Skype. And she used to live, I knew she had moved to Boston, lived there for many, many years, and I started looking on the internet. Sure enough, this woman had moved to Iceland, her Skype number, I sent her a message. Next thing I know, we're talking, and we talked for almost 2 hours. It was amazing. It was utterly amazing. But that was before I recognized that I had spoken to her the night before I went to America. And here, 2nd of March, 1969, I've got everything logged down of my feelings when I was flying, how I went to the airport. This was amazing to me. I forgot about this, that my sisters, my younger sister Maria, and my sister Hilda, and my mom, we all went to the airport together at Keflavik. And I flew to New York. 2 suitcases, or was it? Yeah, 2 suitcases, and all I had was $200. 19 years old. in New York because I had to transfer then from the plane at Kennedy over to Salt Lake City flight. And now granted I had been to London, but being by myself was a different story. So I remember sitting in an airplane on my way to Salt Lake City with my nose glued to the window, watching that huge city of New York. My gosh, how can anything be this big? And then feeling remorse. You couldn't help but feel some remorse about what am I doing here? That's 40 years ago. Almost. But anyway, to make a long story short, I came here and my sister and her husband, I tried to get a job. Couldn't get a job. Because my language was okay. But then again, excuse my language here, but Mormon country, they have definitely their own way. So I started working as a dishwasher up on the airbase. I had wanted to work in a store, maybe, because that's what I did in Iceland. But as soon as they heard my accent, they go, oh no, we don't hire her. So anyway, I started being a dishwasher in this golf club at the base. Yeah. And it was actually okay. People were nice to you. And I'll never forget the lady that was head of the kitchen. I knew nothing about anything. I mean, I green. And she said to me, now, I'm Mormon, but I drink coffee. And I remember saying, so? I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I'm just coming from Iceland. So and then she explained to me, and then I smoke too. Oh my gosh, you know, and you know, you just think about this and you go, so what's the big deal? But that was good news to her. So I stayed there for about a couple of months, and my sister says, well, you know what, I've got some news. We have an opportunity to go back to Iceland, to move to Iceland. And we're going to take our bags and go to Iceland. What do you want to do? I said, well, I don't want to go back home, but I had a brother up in Olympia, Washington. I said, you know what? I don't want to go home. And so they got busy and drove me from Ogden up to Olympia, Washington. And I am with my brother, and they stayed for a couple of days, and I tried to find a job. Well, you know, that wasn't so. There we go again, you know, first one. So I'd always liked hairdressing. And I thought, I can be a hairdresser. I had thought about being a hairdresser after I got out of high school, but it took 4 years in Iceland, and I didn't want to spend 4 years. It's just too long. So my sister goes, okay, I'll pay the tuition for you, and our brother will let you stay in the apartment. So I said, okay, fine. And then she says to me, but remember now, I'm paying a $250 tuition. In '69. I didn't have that kind of money to blow on. And she says to me, I'll never forget when she said this to me. She says, now, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to loan you this money, but if you quit school, you're going to pay me back in interest. And if you don't, and if you finish school, you just pay me the $250. And I'm thinking to myself, are you kidding me? You think I'm going to pay you interest? You better forget it. It ain't going to happen. So I was so lucky to get into this school in Olympia, Washington, and the woman that owned the school also had some hair salons in Lakewood, and she was just a marvelous person. She was a marvelous teacher. She would come like twice a week and hold classes, and she took an interest in the fact that I was interested in my work. And so she took me sort of under her arm and said, okay, I'm going to help you because I know you're going to succeed in this. She would take me to shows in Seattle. I never paid her a dime. She let me sleep in a rollaway at the hotel. You know, so the good people were coming in my life. And I was really appreciating these good people in my life. I couldn't wait to finish school because she said to me, and while you are waiting, after you take your state boards, you come and live with me in Lakewood because I want you to work for me. How can you go wrong on a deal like that? So I told my brother, I said, you know what, I'm going to move up to Joyce's house. And he was not happy with me because he kind of wanted to have me under his thumb anyway. And I didn't want to have any part of that because, you know, I'm free and independent and I want to do my thing. So I moved to Lakewood and waited for my license. Got my license, started working. I worked for her about a little over a year. And then I moved up to Seattle and worked in a wonderful hair salon called House of Edwards. And that was the best thing that ever could have happened to me because the people who worked in that hair salon were experts. They were the best. They taught you how to blow dry, they taught you how to use your equipment, they taught you how to handle the crowd, how to handle people, how to handle yourself, because the most prestigious people in Seattle came to that hair salon. Wow. And it was a wonderful lesson for somebody that came from Iceland to come into this place and be fortunate enough to be given the opportunity to be with what we can say cream of the crop. But there was a problem. I was young. I wasn't known. So people would say, God, I don't want your new person. So you know what? That was okay with me. I worked for everybody. I was kind of like an assistant for about a year. And that was the best investment I could have ever done for my emotional, mental well-being. Because I listened to so much, and I heard so much, and I heard so much inspiration, and how people succeed, and how they move. I mean, we are talking about people that had vision. And I thought to myself, they can do this. There is nobody locking you up and saying, well, you're not going to be able to do anything. No, because you work hard, you're sincere and honest, and you move. I lived in an apartment on Queen Anne. If it hadn't been for some tips that I got for washing hair every once in a while, I don't know how I would have eaten, but that's okay. Paid my rent, which was like $125 a month in a furnished apartment by myself. That was interesting. That was very interesting. Didn't venture out much in the evening, couldn't dare. But anyway, I was in Tacoma one time visiting a friend of mine, of Icelandic descent, a friend of mine, and she had this Christmas party. So she says, oh, did you meet this guy? And I said, no, I haven't met this guy. Well, I met him, I married him. His name is Chuck. 2 children, Ken and Sarah. I married him. We went and moved with our lives. I was always the one that said, no, we can do better, but have limits on what you do to make sure before you take the next step, take care of this step. That's been me. So my son was born. Lovely little boy with white hair, blue eyes. Quite amazing. 3 years later, Sarah arrived, and I was determined to make sure that these children had a life better than I did. I stayed home with them. I did work part-time for a little while. Then opened my own hair salon in my home after I had my daughter, and I made sure that they had a mom and dad that were there for them. I'm an advocate for children and well-being. And whenever I hear people tell me how rotten their kids are, I would love to say, look in the mirror. Where did it come from? We reap what we sow. We're guests on the planet. That's how it works. Make a long story short, my former husband, who is now my former husband after 23 years of marriage, but we were transferred down here in 1981. My son was in kindergarten, she was 3. Transferred down here, I come down here and I look all over for an area where we could buy a house. And we're going here, there, everywhere, and I'm going, no, this is not going to work. This is not going to work. So one day we're down here, and I'm roaming around Beaverton area, and kind of, checking. I happened to find the property I really liked. It gave me the light, it gave me the brightness, it gave me the sun, it gave me space. I saw that. I called up Chuck. I said, hey, you know what? I think I found our property. We're going to build a house. We're going to build a house? I said, you betcha we're going to build a house. Well, you know what? I'm still living in that house. We built a tri-level out here in Beaverton. My children, I sent them to Catholic school. Got him into, what's it again, first grade, and you missed spring break. Poor guy. They were at St. Cecilia School, both my children, through the 8th grade. My son went to Jesuit High School. My daughter went to Valley Catholic for 2 years. And when Jesuit opened up for girls, she was hauled over to Jesuit. I mean, literally, she was hauled. Because you know, she had friends at Valley. Mom goes, no, you're going to go over there. Wow. You cannot go wrong on education. My daughter's an architect. My son graduated from the University of Portland with a degree in journalism. Wow. This was my thing. I said, this is what we do. And you learn by other people's mistakes. Don't have children unless you're going to take care of them. Children are not a blessing like in my situation. They're not a blessing when they're number 6 and there isn't anything to eat. Or the lights get turned on in your house. It's not a blessing. So anyway, I'm thrilled with my children. I have a good life. So anyway, now we're going to talk about my interests regarding doing needlework. I've always, like I said earlier, enjoyed working with my hands. And I started taking interest in Icelandic things. This bell pull right here was done by me many years ago. And these are all old Icelandic utensils from way back when. This was a cod liver lamp. Everybody had their own eating trough. No, what would you call it? It's called askur in Icelandic. They had their own wooden spoon, and they'd have these. These were all made out of wood, and they were all hand carved with your name, your date of birth, the name of the farm you came from. There's a lot of them in the National Museum of Iceland. And then the candles, candle holders. And here we are in the Icelandic national dresses, right here. This is the Lady of the Mountain, the most formal costume. This is now becoming very popular, this particular one here. An old Icelandic style. Of course, they're all Icelandic. I don't need to say that. This is the one I'm wearing right here, my national dress, and then the old-fashioned one. Now, this house right here at the bottom is Viðey, which was built by the Danes, and it is right here. Right here. That's the same place. Now, Hólar, these were all places where the Catholic bishops used to have their diocese or their yeah. And so of course then the Lutheran came in and got rid of all that. But still, these locations like Þingvellir is where they started the old thing, and that's also church and cemetery there. And then Skálholt and Hólar. And this is all, of course, in the Icelandic histories, the stories of the Icelanders. All these places are, of course, sacred. It's our glory. Anyway, then here, this is a wonderful needlework piece that I did so many years ago, and it depicts what my mother used to talk about when I was growing up. This is the book. Piltur og stúlka, Boy and Girl it's called. And the farms in the olden days in Iceland were all in one. You would have have the kitchen maybe in the main building, and then you would have a little parlor, and you have a loft where the whole room is lined with beds on both sides. So in the wintertime, they wouldn't have to venture out. So the animals would be maybe here, and the hay would be here too. Everything was self-contained. The vegetable gardens is depicted a vegetable garden very much the way it was. And they would grow their rutabaga, potatoes, carrots, cabbage, anything in the cool temperature. And they would flourish. This right here is a root cellar. Or it would be a smokehouse where they smoke their lamb, their meat. Or they would have the potatoes under here and the carrots. Or their pickled food that they're so well known for over there. But see, in this particular, this picture right here, when I saw this at some needle points for an Iceland, I thought, I have to do this. And the little girl and the boy, they would recite poetry to each other across the river, which was a very well-known thing to do in Iceland. They'd recite poetry, so that he would do one verse and she would then do the next. And they'd go on and on and on. And my mother would do this, and I would think, how boring is that? But I marvel at her memory, having the life she had. But her family was from a farm which belonged to, on the southwest coast of Iceland, Strandakirkja. And Strandakirkja is a word, and my grandparents farmed that land from the early 1900s. And now I'm going to tell you something fun. This friend of mine over here, Gloria, who is a cousin of mine also, born and raised here in Portland. Her grandparents immigrated to America in 1886, right around there. And when I started talking to her about her grandparents, I said, where were they from? And she says, well, you know, I've got all this information written at home, I'll bring it to you. So she brings me her family history. And I said, well, you have got to have a lot of cousins in Iceland, because she comes from a large family. Well, little did I know, 2 years ago when I was in Iceland, I took her papers to a genealogist. Anyway, and he knows everything about everything. I gave him the papers. He said, come back in 2 days. I came back with my brother-in-law. We're closely related. And her grandfather was a workman on the farm that my mother was born at. And her grandmother worked in a little village in Hektisavik, across the lake from where my grandmother and grandfather farmed. So, I mean, talk about odd. It was just uncanny, because he looked in the books, the travel logs that were, everything was pretty much logged in travel logs in the olden days, and he found her grandparents. And when I saw Voxosat, I thought, how could this be? But it is. So anyway, he gave me some names of people that were related to her, second cousins or so. And I said, okay, give me some names of older people that might remember their forefathers that moved to America in the late 1800s. So anyway, he gave me a list. I started calling. I talked to a man up on the East Coast, and he said to me, oh, but I've got a brother that's not too far from where you were at. I know he'd love to find this information. And you know, it kind of warms your heart when you can tell that you're connecting somebody. So I called her cousin in Hafnarfjörður, and he didn't know quite what to think. Who's this crazy person in Edda calling me? But anyway, to make a long story short, he came for coffee that afternoon. I said, and he looked so much like her. I mean, it was just like, oh my gosh, is this for real? So I said to him, Hjalti, is his name. I said, Hjalti, would you like to talk to your cousin? Oh, no, I don't speak English that well. And I'm going, yeah, right. He is a retired economist. This guy was no dummy. Anyway, talked to him for about a half hour, 45 minutes, and I started saying, she's really nice. She's got a lot going on. She can tell you a lot about your family, and because he then recognized some of the names that were on the list. So we connected them on the Skype, and they sat and chatted for about a half hour. It was wonderful. Give you the feeling of saying, oh my God, isn't this nice? It's really nice. It's wonderful. Here a few years ago, I met another woman here in Portland, and we started talking, and then we kind of lost contact. She was from Iceland also, and we lost contact about 5 or 6 years ago. We reconnected. My friend Susanetta over here, Icelandic girl over here from Rosegrove, and Edda is an Icelandic mother and an American father, and she came here and lived 16, yeah, and she's a wonderful human being, and she's also a cousin of mine. So we're all related somewhere along the line. But anyway, so this is all emotional work in here because I like to connect with what I come from, even if I don't want to live there. I love visiting. But you know what I cherish so much about living in this country? I can be me. You see, the relatives are all so far away, they can't clobber you anymore. That was one of the reasons I left. There's too connected. There's too much, well, you can't do that. Who said you could do that? We never do that. And you don't talk to me like this. It doesn't work. We're here for a reason. And the reason is to make the world a better place to live. So anyway, this is some of my needlework. This is Danish, actually. Yes. And I have a couple of chairs that I've done also that are like this. When I was in Iceland a couple of years ago, I luckily found a treasure. This man right here, Bertel Thorvaldsen, he is a Danish Icelander. He is born in 1770 to an Icelandic father and a Danish mother in Copenhagen. And in Iceland, his sculptures are cherished. And with that in mind, I had always wanted to needlepoint his day and night sculpture.
They're the most beautiful. I have them at home, copies of them framed by Cell Brothers. Wow. Really beautiful.
Yeah. So I bought day and night. Well, I started doing this some years ago, and I just kind of never quite get the work done. So 2 years ago, when I'm in Iceland, my sister and I are going into this antique store and a second-hand store. And I saw, out of the corner of my eye, 9 beautiful needlework pictures of Thorvaldsen. Sewn up, the series. This is the night that I started sewing right here and never finished. And then they had the seasons of life, starting from birth and spring, summer, fall, and winter.
Excuse me, when you hire, they can't see it.
Okay. Yes, I will. This is the last in the season. This is Thorvaldsen. And to think that somebody sold this out of their estate is beyond me. I mean, it is totally incomprehensible to me.
They didn't know what it was.
No. Everybody in Iceland knows what this is. Oh, yeah. But nobody wants to buy it, see. So here comes this. And this particular one, and the day, is used a lot on in cemeteries, on headstones. A lot. You're familiar with that, aren't you? Yeah. So the story goes of this particular find of mine, and to make a long story short, I offered the woman, I said to her, well, how much do you want for these? And she goes, well, I'm not selling them separately. I said, no, I didn't say separately. I just said, how much are you wanting to sell these for? Well, you can have all of them for $1,000. You never saw a credit card flip out so fast in your life. Professionally made, hand-sewn, framed, professionally framed, in non-glaring glass, 9 gorgeous pieces of art. I just go, you've got to be kidding me. But see, what's happening in Iceland is what's happening everywhere in the world. People are forgetting what comes from where. Because television is taking out people's lives, and the movies and all the American stuff is all in Iceland. And I walk around and I think to myself, am I still in Oregon or where am I? It's pretty scary. It literally is sad to see our art not being appreciated. But anyway, came to a good home, came to mine. And I like it. My children know that you cherish these things. That's how it goes. It's who we are. Anyway, I brought some needlework, yes, and then I brought a picture of my grandmother and my grandfather on my mother's side. And these were the farmers at the Rockshore Center. Handsome, hard-working people. They had 11 children. My grandmother was a weaver, spinner. She did everything. Now, I was fortunate enough in 1992 to have a costume made for myself, which I'm wearing here. I started telling my family that I was wanting to do this, and my mom said, oh no, you're not going to do that, it costs way too much money. Next thing I know, my cousin comes to me and she says, you know, Edda, if you want to do this, I'm more than happy to give you some of the jewelry I have from your grandmother, from my mother, from so-and-so and so-and-so. And you know what? Next thing I know, I'm looking for a seamstress. And, you see this right here? This is the gold on my hat. It's my grandmother's. And my grandmother passed away in 1947, and I'm born in 49. I'm lucky enough to have her, my middle name is her first name, and I have this cherished hat, or this holder right here. And Marion was saying to me, Edda, you put your hat on. Anyway, I don't wear the hat that much, but this is the way it looks. And this is just marvelous stuff. I mean, this is from her costume right here. And this is from her, all this is from her costume and that. I had this made. These all came from my aunt. The bracelet came from one of my aunts. I mean, this was a real family get together to do this. But anyway, make a long story short, I have a very talented family. My sister Hilda knits. This is all the original color of the sheep in Iceland. Right here. This is the skirt. Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. When I was in Iceland the last time, 2 years ago, she said to me, Edda, I'm going to give you this skirt because I know you're the only one that's going to appreciate it or wear it. She gave me this skirt. Now this is just nothing but a work of beautiful art. How would you like to knit this? This is all single thread, knitted in the original colors. It's wool, Icelandic wool, 100% wool. So anyway, these are my sisters right here, my 3 oldest sisters, and dresses that my mother crocheted. And this is my oldest sister right here, my second oldest sister, and the third one. So anyway, this is my mother, wonderful picture of my mom. I love this picture of her because we were down at Seaside. She'd come and visit every now and then. And I'd take her to the beach. She loved the beach. Everybody in Iceland loves the coast. They're raised in the ocean, you know. So anyway, she's sitting on this, in the sand dunes in Seaside, and flat on her rump with her feet up, and she's running. They're always taking pictures of me. I don't want pictures of me. And this is my favorite picture. Down here in Seaside. It's great. She was a great woman who had a hard life, but yet found the best in everything. So, anyway, there are some books here with all sorts of things that have taken place in my life. I'm a collector of many different things. And a saver of this and that and the other thing. I think memories are what makes us live. And then I'm going to end with my very enjoyable hobby that I do now. It's called marathoning. I love it. It's great. My first marathon was about 4 years ago, and I was so absolutely ecstatic about it when I finished. They took my picture. And the next year when I was doing a marathon, one of my friends down at the Hilton down here.
The Portland Marathon.
Yeah, Portland Marathon. Yeah, I know. Your husband is a hero.
Yeah, I know too.
I know. And your husband, I think, is the oldest one that ever walked a marathon. And he's got his book, his name and all.
American Marathon.
Yeah. Anyway, the following year, this program is handed out. Guess whose picture is on the front? This was funny. I remember being so elated when I finished this that I couldn't believe that I had actually walked 26.2 miles in less than 6 hours. That's walking 13-mile minutes. I mean, that's moving. And that's for somebody that has not done anything like this before. And as this photographer is standing there, he's, and I'm just going, yeah, right on. And sure enough, he shot my picture. So, my claim to fame right here. So anyway, there are books here.
Who is the woman right beside you there?
Oh, this is my mother. This is my mother. She was a wonderful, beautiful woman. She was a beautiful woman. Hadn't it been for my mother, well, of course I wouldn't be here, I understand that. But when she finally came into her own, she was an inspiration. She was a marvelous woman to put up with my dad for one thing, but with putting up with what all she did. It was amazing. It was utterly amazing. She was a wonderful, wonderful human being. She died in 1992 at the age of 80 years old. And when my sister called me and said that mother had suffered a stroke, she said, well, if you want to come and see her, you need to come now. I said, I'm on the next plane. And it was the best thing I could have done for her and me. I spent 10 days with her while she was in the hospital, passing away. And she couldn't talk much, but some. And it was a fantastic time in my life. I came back to America after that in 1992, and I said to my former husband, I said, you know what? I just watched my mother die. Now, I have a plan. Our children are on school, and things are going well for us. Now, I want to know what you're going to do. He looked at me, what do you mean? I said, death comes to all of us. So what are we going to do? Again, he said, we don't have to do anything. I said, okay, fine. I gave him 2 years and I left. He left. And you know what? Since then, life, of course, changes when you're by yourself, but that's okay. Because you've become a stronger person for it. I have both my children through school, like I said earlier. I have a good life. I have a great network of friends. I am involved in many different things. And I only do things that I want with people that want to be with me, and I want to be with them. And that is what I do now. I'm 59 years old. I don't waste my time. I don't have to. It's all over with. It's moving on, being happy, sharing your life, and caring. That's what it's all about. So anyway, this is a wonderful tapestry book right here of Icelandic needlepoint. I found this at Powell's. This particular piece I'm working on right now. And this is a horse saddle. Saddle for horse. In the olden days, when they used to ride horses a lot. I was lucky enough to befriend people when I first moved here. Young students from Iceland. They were going to Lewis and Clark College. 20 years ago. We're still friends. They are working for the Icelandic Embassy in Tokyo. My friend Eric over here says to me one day, Edda, why don't you come to Tokyo with me?
Yeah.
I go, what? I'm going to Tokyo. Yes, you are. It's only $800. You can stay here in London. I said, I'll call him. I was on the plane with him. Spent wonderful 2.5 weeks in an absolute glorious country. And Eric and I, this is in January, we took a trip on the bus up to Mount Fuji, but of course it's closed at the lower level because of the snow. But we were sitting having lunch, and sure enough, the sun comes out and the mountain comes right there. And we're sitting there going, are we lucky or bad? That was a blessing. I mean, that was wonderful. It was absolutely... Any of you have an opportunity to go to Japan, I highly recommend it. When I was in Tokyo, these friends of mine said, oh, have you heard of so-and-so, this artist? And I said, no, I haven't. Well, anyway, so we go to this exhibit. And this is Elias Olafsson. He is Danish, Denmark, Germany, and Iceland. And right now in New York City, he's lighting up the bridges in New York City. And it's going to be a light show like a waterfall. Yeah, and there's a big exhibit of all Icelandic artists in New York right now. And this is his photography. He does all sorts of beautiful things. Questions?
Are you gonna sing us a song?
Oh my God, you asked me that before. Since when did I sing? Did I sing? Oh, okay. That was years ago at North Hall. You know, I remember that. I remember you said something about me singing, so I thought, you know what?